Well, hello, good evening, and welcome if you're watching this live. I hope this is working. I was going to check. Nick, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I did have a small panic then.
Because with 20 seconds to go, it said stream disconnected. I don't know. Neither of us know what we're doing. Anyway, good evening. Welcome to the show. If you're watching us live, or maybe you're watching and listening back to this after the event, it's the latest in our little series of interviews that we like to do. A joint venture, if you like, between EV Nick's YouTube channel and myself. My name is Martin Lee, the host of EV News Daily, and very happy to bring you a very special guest on the podcast and the YouTube show today. And that's Sarah Merrick. She is the CEO and founder of Ripple Energy. Welcome along to the podcast tonight.
Hiya, really pleased to be here. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for giving up your time. Nick, this was your idea to get Sarah on. Why were you so passionate to do this interview?
A couple of reasons. I think Sarah's company, as we're going to discuss, have a really unique sort of opportunity in the space. It's also National Women's Month this month, and it's also a windy day. So she literally fell on the best day we could have had her on.
Okay, let's try and give the elevator pitch. And I should ask Sarah to do this really, but I'll try and show that I know at least a tiny amount about what we're talking about. And that is, Sarah's idea is for a community, well, not community, but a co-op funded energy system of the future. Sarah, how close am I to getting your business in 5 seconds?
Not far off. Yeah, so we basically enable people to own a tiny bit of a large scale wind farm and then get the electricity that it generates supplied to their home via the grid. So as an alternative to rooftop solar that's really cheap, instead of putting solar panels on your roof, you own a little bit of a wind farm and then the power gets supplied to you via the grid. So yeah, it's just a really simple way of going green.
So who owns wind farms at the moment? What kind of organizations?
So mostly it's sort of like utilities, and quite a few banks own them, and sort of infrastructure funds, and same with gas-fired power stations and stuff. And we just think actually the thing is with wind and solar is that people can own them. So there's no reason really why big companies and big funds need to own them. We think people can actually do a pretty good job at it themselves.
So
with our help, obviously.
Yeah. So let me try and understand this. So if I sign up to Ripple Energy, am I signing up to an energy contract where I get gas and electricity off of you like any other company, or can I just be a Ripple Energy member and have another tariff with someone else? How does that exactly work?
So we're not an electricity supplier ourselves. So we do all the wind farm ownership bit. We manage all of that for you. And then we partner with suppliers. So we've partnered with Co-op Energy and Octopus Energy for our first project. And then for our second project, we plan to partner with up to 8 suppliers, which means that basically you buy your bit of the wind farm and you can then be supplied by Octopus or Co-op or one of our other suppliers. And then it means you've still got choice. So you don't have to stay with that supplier for 25 years. The 25 years at the wind farm is going to last for. You can switch between them if you want to, and yeah, so you still got all the choice that you otherwise would have. And obviously those suppliers offer electricity and gas, but yeah, we don't do the supply bit. We do the wind farm bit, and then we tell each of the suppliers how much has to be, what savings have to be applied to your bill each month. So because you own a bit of a wind farm, you get the cheap electricity that it generates that gets supplied via, say, Co-op Energy, and then you get a saving applied to your bill every month according to how much your bit of the wind farm generated the previous month.
Excellent. Now, I remember when I first became more interested in kind of green tariffs. We need to be very careful, actually, in terms of saying about green tariffs, in terms of which energy companies buy from renewable energy providers. And some do it with kind of, it's not a fudge of a paperwork. It's and there's nothing dodgy going on, but there's ways of having a green tariff and not actually buying that green electricity. But I'll put that aside for now. I sound so stupid now admitting to this, but I remember when I first saw that, I was thinking, well, it's the same cable that comes to my house as my neighbor's house. So, and obviously going back a long time when green tariffs came around, and so just explain to the people watching and listening how that works. Clearly, the national grid supply electricity. The electrons aren't of a certain type. So how does it work?
Exactly. So you can't with a green tariff. you can't track electrons through the grid. So, but what you can measure is what goes in, and then you measure what goes out. So, with a normal, with a green tariff, basically you have to get each wind farm generates a certificate, a green certificate for every bit of electricity that it generates, and then to have a green tariff, that supplier has to say, I've supplied this much electricity under a green tariff, so here's this many green certificates. They match each other off, and then that's a green tariff. But you don't have to have bought electricity from a wind farm in order to have a green tariff. You can just buy the certificate. So you could, if you're a wind farm, you could sell your power to one supplier, and then you could sell your green certificate to somebody else. It's the one with the green certificate that gets to claim the greenness, as you so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas with Ripple, what you're doing is it's still a green tariff, or you're on a green tariff, but basically it's you own a bit of the wind farm. Your bit of that generation is bought by Octopus and then is supplied to your home under an Octopus tariff. So nobody can trace the exact electrons through the grid to your home, but contractually it's your electricity that is bought by Octopus and is supplied to your home. So it means that you get you get the cheap green electricity. It's your electricity. However, we can't obviously guarantee that it's the exact electrons that your wind farm generates. There's absolutely no way of doing that.
You mean you're not going to come and install a cable from your turbine to my house?
No, exactly. So we've got the national grid. The national grid's fantastic. It works really, really well. So we might as well use it. Is our thoughts really?
Yeah, one thing that I've discussed even with Greg in the past is, in fact, someone's just asked in the questions about distribution costs. So here in the UK, we have just set distribution costs no matter where the energy basically is coming from. So is there any, I believe, is the national grid looking at ways where if, let's say, you installed a turbine outside my house, almost, just literally a couple of miles away, and someone else has got a turbine which is 50 miles away, is there any going to be a point where the closer the turbine is to you, the less distribution cost is going to be to you?
You could potentially. However, we think that it's a lot easier. If you want to try and get those customers in that very local area, that's great, but that's going to be quite expensive to try and get quite a high. You'd be talking whatever 10-20% of people in a village or something to make that work. We think it's a lot better just to let anyone from all over the country own a bit of a wind farm and get the electricity that it generates, because it's just so much easier, and actually it's much better to offer a really simple solution rather than one that says, okay, if you live in this postcode you can do this, if you live in that postcode it's that. It's just, yeah, we've just gone for simplicity. It's just really, really simple. And yeah, undoubtedly there are sort of more complicated, very localized solutions that you can get, but we think actually the economies of scale with energy are so massive. So you might have a small wind farm that can, in theory, be powering a village or something, but actually it's far, far better to have big wind farms, and those big wind farms are unlikely to be located outside London, or certainly in southeast of England. So it's far better for customers all over the UK to be able to just get access to the cheap electricity that a big wind farm is generating, rather than try and generate at a sort of smaller scale but more locally. So obviously there'll be loads of different solutions, and if people want to do that, that's great, but what we're about is just big scale projects that are open to everyone.
Now, Nick and I are both on Octopus Agile, so because we're both nerds anyway, so we don't mind our electricity price changing every half an hour. It's not an onerous thing to look at the app and work out when to charge the car. So, but the essence of that tariff, which wouldn't suit so many people, is that when the wholesale price is lower, that gets passed on from Octopus. They had a small fee to cover running their business. And equally, when it's expensive between 4 and 7 p.m. in the afternoon, they pass that wholesale cost on to the consumer. And if you change habits, it's amazingly how a few pounds in your pocket can make you change habits. That's a big part of going green, is changing light bulbs and changing the way you use electricity. So help us understand. So we know the grid price fluctuates, and we know that very well because we're on that tariff. The price of electricity coming out of a wind turbine is that pretty much constant over the 25 years of its life? And how does that then mean that my electricity would be cheaper? Because I get that I'm not getting the electricity from that wind turbine. I get that it's not free. So how do the mechanics of it work with the price of electricity?
So basically, you can have obviously the price of electricity changes every half hour. It changes every hour, every day, every month, every year. So what we've done is we've fixed the price over a whole year, and then basically and the cost of operating the wind farm is the same throughout the whole year, throughout its 25-year lifetime, basically. So what happens is Octopus essentially buys the electricity at the wind farm's operating cost instead of buying it at the market price, which goes up and down all the time. So then the difference between Octopus paying the market price, which it otherwise would do if it was any other wind farm, and the fact that it's paid the cheaper operating cost, that saving is passed on to you as the owner. So if the wholesale price was £50 or 5p a kilowatt hour, and the operating cost of the wind farm is 2p a kilowatt hour, that 3p a kilowatt hour is passed on to you. If your bit of the wind farm generates 100 kilowatt hours, you would save £3 off your bill that week or whatever. So it's a way of stabilizing the cost. So basically, if you cover, or if all of your electricity consumption is covered by your share of the wind farm, the electricity part of your electricity bill isn't the volatile wholesale price, it's the operating cost of your wind farm. And it's that stable, low price that is passed on to consumers. So you get to benefit, there's very few other ways that you can stabilize your electricity costs for 25 years, except by owning a bit of a wind farm that is going to be operating at a very stable price for the long term.
Yeah, and I think another aspect to look at is, I care about price, but I also care about being green, and that is one of the reasons I'm on a tariff like Agile, because at the moment it's actually more expensive because it's a couple of generations are down. And I think with your project, it is just so much greener because you are actually physically paying towards having these turbines built. I mean, are you looking for onshore or offshore, or is there no?
First of all, it's going to be onshore just because that's super simple, and we're keeping it. We only launched last year, so it's all really, really simple for now. And then, but we totally want to get into offshore in the longer term. So yeah, we're starting, like, our first project is it's a single turbine in South Wales. We want to be getting into bigger and bigger projects. And like I said, we can do any fuel-free technology. So we've looked at a few solar projects as well. So it'll be wind, solar, onshore wind, offshore wind, and solar, basically. But it's all about that impact. And I think that's a really key point, is with Ripple, you're making these wind farms happen. That's not necessarily the case when you're on a green tariff. But also you can be on Ripple and on Agile. So if your savings from your wind farm are whatever, £10 in a month, you get that £10 applied to your Agile bill, whether you've done loads and loads of optimization and got your bill down to £50, you then get that £10, brought it down to £40. Or if you haven't done anything and you've been using loads of power in peak times and your bill's £100, you get the £10 applied to your £100 bill. So they work completely in tandem.
Yeah. So if I now go onto your website and sign up, I can stick with my Octopus tariff as I am right now, and I can invest in that wind turbine and see that back on my Octopus bill or through you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first 10-15 minutes we've established the business of Ripple, because it's not something that is as simple as saying we'll build a wind turbine and then we'll have a tariff, and the tariff will be X pence per kilowatt hour. It's not designed that way. That's not the business. So thank you for helping me understand it more. Let's go back a little bit and do the superhero origin story. It still is a new business. This was something that you wanted to do whilst you were still working within the industry. And I don't know if you want to say who you were working for or not, but this started as a kind of an evening and weekend business, a bootstrapped company that you started from the genesis of an idea, and you've built up. So give us that origin story.
Yeah. So I was working for Vestas, which is the world's largest wind turbine manufacturer, and I was covering public affairs. I was talking to politicians, and I was vice chair of the UK Wind Association as well. So I was like working in the heart of the electricity of the wind industry. And then it's probably 2 or 3 years beforehand, we just worked out, actually, if somebody, the amount of a wind farm that somebody would have to own it to supply their to generate enough electricity to meet their electricity needs was so tiny. And it's like, well, nobody's doing this. And I was talking to politicians saying, wind is actually now the UK's cheapest source of power, and it's also one of the most popular forms of power. And then I worked out, how much it would cost somebody to actually own a bit of a wind turbine. And I was like, actually, why isn't anyone doing this? And then so after a couple of years, when nobody else was doing it, it was like, all right, I'll do it then, sort of thing. So I just sort of developed the idea. I set up a company, and then I just developed the idea, weekends and stuff. And then, it got to the point where I couldn't do any more. I just didn't have enough time. I needed to sort of focus on it properly. So then I, quit my job. That was back in spring 17, I think. Took the summer off, spent loads of time with the kids, and then, come September, just cracked on with it. And we sort of grew from there. So it started off with just me. Then 2 other people joined, our projects guy, so our wind farm guy, and our CTO joined about sort of 6 months later. Then we raised some money so we could hire even more people. And then we've just been developing it since then. But I mean, ultimately, it seemed such a brilliant idea that needed to happen. And then when nobody else was doing it, I just thought, right, I'll do it then. So yeah.
Wow. And so although the company has energy in its name, obviously, as you say, you are not an energy supplier. You are a business that will connect lots of dots, and you have that knowledge to connect that. So you don't build wind turbines.
We manage that. I always say we're never going to own a spanner. So we manage the build. So we manage all the due diligence. We manage letting the tenders for the civils contracts, the electrical engineering contracts, the turbines, all that sort of thing. But we are not going to get up a turbine and mend it when it, when it needs maintenance. We will manage the third parties who do all that. So we're the sort of people in the middle that just bring everything together, so that, because it is quite complicated. So you need people who are expert in doing all that. So that's what we do. We bring it all together, package it up, make it really, really simple, but we don't build the turbine. We obviously build it, we manage it on behalf of our customers. They clearly don't know how to build it, so we manage the whole thing for them. But yeah, we won't own a spanner, basically.
And equally, you aren't asking people to invest in your business. So you might be asking for a £100 or a £1,000 investment, according to whatever people want to, commit to the idea of owning part of a wind turbine, but they're not investing in Ripple. So how does that framework, that legal framework, happen in terms of almost sort of separation of church and state, if you like?
Exactly. So you've got the wind farm is owned by a cooperative. So we helped get the cooperative. There are independent co-op directors. So we sort of, again, we provide all the admin support and arrange all the meetings, do all the papers and stuff for that. But it's a separate organisation, which is a co-op. So people, our customers, join the co-op, and it's the co-op that owns the wind farm. And then Ripple is a private company. We're the managing agent for the co-op. So we provide services to the co-op that basically make everything happen. So we do all the sort of complicated stuff. So the members of the co-op can just buy their bit of the wind farm, sit back and relax, and they don't have to do anything at all.
And the co-op is the organization, it's a legal entity, which owns, so you are part, that's where your money's gone, and you own that wind turbine. And even after a period of time, say there's a company come along, I don't know, we'll call them Tipple, and they're slightly better and cheaper at what you do. The co-op could even choose to have them run the wind turbine after a period of time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we don't, a bit like, we don't want our customers to be locked into one supplier for 25 years. We don't want the co-op to be locked into, it's not healthy for us to know, okay, this is fine. We've got this for 25 years. So after a period of time, in theory, somebody else can come along, and if we're doing a terrible job, they can just appoint somebody else to do that for them. So it's completely, it's completely separate, but it's the co-op which owns the project, and they basically pull all the strings, and we just support them, and we're the sort of facilitator of the whole thing. But the co-op is the entity that's in charge of everything.
So basically, the way you've said it, the way Ripple Energy set up with the co-op, you're just the manager, the helper of the project. But if the co-op, like Martin said, decide that you're doing a terrible job, you structured it in a way that it can be taken away from you, which kind of it says very straightforward that you want to get this right from day one, and you're not locking people in, which is really, really nice to see.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, the co-op. The co-op's in control. They can do, and we've purposely done that. A big part of what we're doing is to democratize ownership. And if we were then locking them into us, that's not democratic. That's not giving people the choice that we think they deserve. So yeah, totally. Is
that why you called it Ripple then? Because you're causing ripples in the energy industry.
Yeah, and it's a really positive. It is. We want to cause a big change. Yeah.
Okay, I have more daft questions, Nick. If I can I jump in with some more? Is that okay, or do you want to?
If you got some fantastic daft questions, you go away, Martin.
Hey, okay. Next daft question. I get that I'm investing an amount of money. It's an investment that I'm making for a long-term benefit.
Yeah.
It's not like buying shares or equities, for instance. So I assume somebody can't come along and say, "Oh, I'd like to buy your bit of the wind farm." I can't then sell it on an open market or anything.
So you buy shares in the co-op, but because the way the co-op set up, you can't. There's not going to be a secondary market in your co-op shares, basically. So you can, if you say you move to America and you don't need any electricity in the UK anymore, or there's another fantastic supplier who isn't one of our supply partners. You're like, right, I don't want to have anything to do with the wind farm anymore. I want to give up my ownership. You can then withdraw your shares in the co-op, and then you basically get their sort of digress. We digress the value of those shares. So halfway through the wind farm's life, they'll be worth half their original value, sort of thing, and then you would just get your share value back again. So again, you're not locked in. We'll then keep a waiting list of people who are like, actually, I've just bought an EV, I want to own a bit more of the wind farm. And then we say, okay, if you want to sell your kilowatt of shares, there's people here he wants 500 watts and they want 500 watts. So they get to buy your shares at the digressed rate. So there's not going to be, you can't make a profit on your shares basically by selling them. You can get additional value because we expect the savings off your bill to be greater than the money you sort of put in to buy your shares, but you can't. There's not going to be a sort of market, and you're not allowed to sell your shares to somebody else. You can only withdraw them, and then we can issue them to somebody else.
Okay. Well, I've got two daft questions off the back of that then.
Okay.
So you haven't built a turbine yet, have you?
It's about to start construction. Yeah.
Okay. So if anyone who's invested now, I presume they don't get anything back from the co-op because you've not generated any energy.
So the month after it starts generating, which should be November, they would then see the savings on their bill in December. So basically, your savings get applied. We look at, okay, this is how much the wind farm's generated each month. This is how much your bit generated. We then tell Octopus, okay, Martin, you need to save £10.58 off your bill. Nick, you need to save £8.39, and then that just gets applied to your December bill based on your amount of generation in November. So
that's interesting. So on a windy day like today, I can be rubbing my hands together and thinking, I haven't got to wait a year to see this benefit, or 25 years. It's literally next month's electricity bill. Exactly. Wow. Yes. Okay, that's so cool. And of course, that'll have some seasonal fluctuations as the weather does. Sorry, Nick, carry on.
But those fluctuations are actually, it tends to be windier. Obviously, people use more electricity in the winter. It tends to be windier in the winter. It tends to be within the day. It's a bit windier between 4 and 7 at night, actually. So so it's actually, there's quite a good correlation between, obviously it goes up and down all the time, but in general the trend is relatively well correlated with consumption. So like I said, tends to be windier in the winter. People tend to use more electricity in the winter as well. So it's far better correlated than, say, solar is, where it's obviously solar generates more in the summer. That's not necessarily when people are using the most electricity.
Yeah, and it also tends to be generating when people are at work and not at home, rather than during the peak times, which is what wind tends to be peaks. Obviously, we are one of the windiest places in Europe, which most people don't realise. So the first one's being finished in November. The big question, what me and Mar want to know, is when can we come and see it with hard hats and high vis jackets?
So yeah, the turbine I think will be October. So it's not. Yeah, we will. Like, all our members want to have a big opening party. We don't think that's going to be good in November. So we'll probably have next spring, Easter. We're sort of thinking that'll be the right sort of time when we can get some decent weather. Because it's not. I've been on site when it's pouring with rain, and it's no fun at all. So yeah, spring next year will be the time to have, we want to, everyone's so excited about it. We're really excited about it. We just want it to create this fantastic day for all our wonderful members. But that's looking more like next spring. But the turbine will be there end of this year.
It's a very physical thing. It's in South Wales near Cardiff. It's 2.5 megawatts, and it would be very cool if you owned part of it. I don't know, on a holiday, or even if you live in Wales, to drive past and bore the kids in the back of the car, being like, "Dad owns a bit of that." Weird question. I'll ask it anyway, because we had a family. We became a family recently, so we had to do a bunch of estate planning. If I invest in a bit of a wind turbine and then the worst happens to me, what happens to my bit of it in terms of inheritance?
Yes. So basically, like I said, you can't sell your shares to anyone else. The only time you can transfer them to somebody else is if you die. So if you died, basically on our website, you can put in, I want my shares to go to whoever. And then, in the unfortunate event that those shares need to be passed on to somebody else, they can be. So they're only inheritable. They can't, like I said, they can't be traded or anything, but they can be inherited by somebody else if you did happen to die.
Okay, well, thank you for answering that. It's the weird practicalities of things like that. But my mind is kind of running wild in terms of, I would almost want I don't know if this is possible, like a dashboard that I could log into as a part owner, and like, how fast is it turning and how much has it made today? Is that even possible, or is that like
that's what we're all planning that? So we want everyone to be able to see, okay, my 1500 watts is generating this much. We also then want to be able to show people this is how much you're using in your home. Then you can sort of see, okay, I'm generating more than I'm using. Your dashboard can say how much you've generated at the moment, today, for the past month since it's been operating, how much electricity bill savings you've had as well. So all of that stuff, we are going to we're starting developing our sort of operational dashboard at the moment. So our UX designer is just going for it with all that stuff.
I hate when Martin asks a question that I was about to ask myself.
Really, were you? Oh yeah, I asked a good one.
It's literally on my spreadsheet of, will we be able to see how fast the turbine is turning? I mean,
we really want to get a webcam so you can see it live.
Yes.
The issue is where we can. There aren't any buildings nearby, so we really want it to happen so that you can just see on your dashboard, you can see it going around. It's where do you put the cam? So that's sort of
the center of the turbine.
But we want people to feel part of it, and that they can, they are really sort of attached to it. We don't want it to be like, oh, there's this thing going on over there, but it's got, there's no way you can sort of get involved with it. We want people to be really, really involved, being able to see what's going on. So like I said, a webcam would be brilliant, but it's where we can put it is the issue.
That's the thing about data, and something that Octopus approved with Agile, which is if you give people the data, they will use it. So if someone sees that the turbine's spinning and producing lots of energy, and there's a surplus, they go, oh, I can plug my car in, my turbine's generating electricity. I think involving people in the data, Octopus has shown people are more interested in energy than other people actually think. Most people in the energy sector think nobody cares about energy, but it's not true.
No, exactly. And there'll be so much data, and it will just be it's a really good challenge to have to turn all this data into something that's really easy to see, easy to use, easy to sort of like translate into, okay, I can see this, so I will do whatever. I will go and charge my car, or and you know, ultimately we want to skip that bit so that your car will know when your wind farm's operating or not. So yeah, there's just so much really cool data that we can show people. It's more about how do we sort of keep it super simple for the people that aren't interested, whilst also giving all that detail for the people that are. And that's the sort of you know, I think ultimately just be like, right, you unlock all these other things if you want, but if you just want to see the high level stuff, that's fine, you can.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is I'm starting to understand now how many variables are involved. So if it's windy or if it's not, in terms of the generation, will affect my return. And you talked about the 25-year life of the wind turbine as well, but also those other factors in terms of the wholesale price. So there are lots of variables. So there might not be one single answer to this, but I guess a common investment question is, if I say I'm handing over, you know, X pounds out the door today, a lot of people would say, well, what's my ROI on that? So after how many years, when do I break even? And then I'm in the black. But can you answer that question without lots of disclaimers?
So we have three different, so the key variables are the electricity price. So we use three different government price scenarios for the electricity price, and then we have three different scenarios for how much generation over the course of a year the wind farm generates. So then we just have a table in our share offer document. We sort of set out, okay, in the sort of lowest wind scenario and the lowest price scenario, your IRR would be X%. In the best scenario with the highest wind output and the highest electricity price, it would be Y. And so we make it all really super clear that, you know, we base everything, all the sort of headline figures is just on the sort of central of both cases. But yeah, you can, and it's, I think it's 4.7% for over 25 years is sort of the sort of central case is what we expect. Obviously, that is open to, you know, the different sort of scenarios, but yeah, broadly, that's what we're expecting.
So if it's 4.75% ROI at the moment, I presume if wholesale prices did dramatically increase, then the return on investment would be greater. Yes. If for some reason we figure out a way of making endless energy for free, then obviously then that would drop. But you know, in theory, energy prices do tend to go up.
Yeah. So and also in the, you know, in the low scenario where electricity prices are really low, it's almost like a hedge, because okay, your return from your wind farm wouldn't be as high, but also your electricity bill isn't going to be as high either. So it's sort of, yeah, it's you are sort of partly protected on a sort of, you know, whole household income basis, because, you know, okay, the return, the saving off your wind farm is as much, but actually it's not as much because your bill's lower anyway.
Yeah, we had that weird COVID time this time last year, where on the Agile tariff, at least, it was going negative during the day. And it was, you know, we're plugging in the car and using the immersion to heat the hot water. And then maybe September, October time, Nick, you were saying some generation went offline or something, but I noticed how they were, you know, it was capped at 35 pence, which Octopus do with Agile. And it must have been higher than that. So let me ask you about the lifespan, because 25 years is a long, you know, it's a long-term play. This isn't for everyone. If you, like you say, if you are planning on, I don't know, moving house every couple of years, and in 2 years you might want to cover your house in solar, you might want to save your money for that. But if you're pretty sure that, well, maybe you're in this house for a long time, or even if you move, you don't want to cover your roof in solar panels.
It goes with you anyway. So
yes,
it's only if you wanted to move and put solar panels on your new house. Yeah.
You know, you think, well, I'm not going to save my money if I'm buying a house and it's got a north-facing something. You know, at no point having that money sat in the bank, so I'll invest in a wind farm. What happens after? So it is definitely a long-term play, and not for everybody, but for a certain type of person. But what happens after 25 years?
So again, the co-op decides. So so after whatever, probably 18 years, we can look at, okay, so how's it going? Basically, do we want to, or do we want to help the co-op try and get planning permission to put a new turbine on, maybe a bigger turbine? Do we want to, maybe do a big refurbishment of the turbine and extend its life by whatever, 5, 10 years? Or do we just want to say, okay, we've had a lovely time, but we're just going to dismantle we're going to sort of run the turbine for as long as it can, and then we're just going to dismantle it. But basically, it will be the co-op that decides that. So yeah, the co-op will just vote on what it wants to do. If it's about putting up a new turbine, then obviously there'll have to be more, there'll have to be new investments. It'll be, a brand new turbine. But yeah, ultimately, the members decide. So nothing is determined. It's not like this will happen. Ultimately, it's up to what the members want to do as to what will happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now you've brought up, and I've got to ask this geeky fact now. Martin's going to love this as well. How many megawatts are the turbines that you're putting up, the first initial ones? And
so 2.5.
2.5. So every one turn.
It's only a single turbine. One turbine, 2.5 megawatts. Yeah.
So one turn it generates 2.5 meg. How does it work?
So if it was operating at full output for an hour, it would generate 2 megawatt hours. So each turn will power a house for 8 hours.
Each turn.
Each at full power, one rotation would power a house for 8 hours.
Wow. That's very cool.
Martin like that fact, didn't you, Martin?
No, I love that. How does it compare to, because offshore has been so big, and particularly when I go see friends either in the the Northwest or North Wales, and you do that car journey and you look out to sea, and there's you can just, as far as the eye can see. So offshore has been very popular. How does this compare to the kind of turbines being installed at the moment in the UK in terms of size wise and generation? So
it's pretty small compared. So 2.5 megawatts. The first offshore turbines were 2 megawatts. Obviously, that was 20 years ago. They offshore turbines have just got huge now. So you'll get the biggest is they're getting up to sort of 12, 13, even 15 megawatts. I mean, they're just and a one rotation can power a house for like 2 days. They're huge. So yeah, I mean those turbines, and they our one is 125 meter to the tip. Some of those offshore ones are like 230 meters to the tip. They are just huge, and the diameter of the rotors are like 200 meters plus. They're just vast machines, and it's just incredible to have seen what's happened to offshore technology over the last 20 years, because it is, it's so impressive what's been achieved.
Wow.
Yeah. So one question I've got to ask, as we're getting close to the end now, Sarah, is obviously this month is Women's History Month, and there is not a lot of women currently in the clean tech industry. Is there anything that Ripple are trying to do to try and encourage more women into the industry?
So there used to be, at the beginning, 20 years ago, it was not mostly. There was there was a lot of women, sort of typified by women, and then 10 years later, all the boys piled in, basically.
I'm so sorry.
But in terms of sort of consumers as well, I think and like we've been sort of like wrestling with this ourselves. So like our first 100 customers, only 11% were women. We have been trying to sort of appeal to more women, because ultimately we want to be mainstream. We don't want to be a sort of like niche thing. We want it to appeal to the mainstream, and obviously the women are a big part of the mainstream. So of our last 100 customers, 25 are women. So we have, when we've been trying to sort of I think just sort of the hypothesis that we're testing, and when we need to obviously do more testing, is that it tends to be the early adopters who love all the detail and knowing exactly the real ins and outs of how everything works, and really want to get into the detail. They tend to be men, and actually women, I expect, or I think, are just like, they just want it to work and not have to worry about all that sort of stuff. And so it's about, like I sort of said before, that it's getting all that data and all that really, really geeky stuff that's really cool, but also lots of people wouldn't necessarily be interested in that. So it's about balancing it out with, if you don't want to get involved in any of that stuff, you just don't have to. You can keep it out, really super simple. And obviously myself as a woman, it's just like, I just want it to work. I don't it's just like, I just you're you're quite busy and you just want it to work. And so I think it's about us sort of, making it easy and just not a hassle for people, and but also not losing all that data and all that really cool stuff, but not making that a requirement to be involved. So it's a bit like, like with EV, some people really want to know, how many miles they're going to get from a charge and all that sort of stuff, and other people are like, I just want to use my car, sort of thing. And ultimately you have to appeal to both. And so we're trying to do a sort of, just a more sort of stripped down version of, okay, this is how you join. It's really easy, you don't have to worry about anything, whilst also still giving all the cool techie stuff, making all that available for the people that want it. So it's sort of, it is, we're learning as we're going, basically. But I just checked today on the sort of customer numbers, and I was really pleased that I sort of felt that it had been, like we sort of do our website chats and stuff, and I sort of felt like there were more women that I was sort of chatting to. So yeah, I was really pleased that it has started. Obviously, there's still a long way to go. But yeah, I think it's just about stripping it back and just being like, right, it just works. Just do this and then it's done. You haven't got to worry about it. But yeah, like I said, whilst not losing all the cool stuff as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, but it's one that we want to, succeed in.
I'd love to use the last few minutes just to answer a few questions, and I brought this up before we went live, actually, and that was that whole thing of, if you live in a block of flats and there's a hole in the roof, all of a sudden the management agency will come to you and say, oh well, now you owe us $2,000, you all got to chip in because there's a hole in the roof. So Raj has that question. What about repairs and maintenance? What if it falls over?
Yeah, so all of that, so the operating costs of the wind farm, there's no fuel involved. So the operating costs are the operations and maintenance contracts, all the insurance, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the wind farm's operating costs it's not the fuel, it's all the insurances and stuff like that to cover those eventualities. So it's all the asset management, we'll have a contract in place with the turbine manufacturer. They will then be the ones doing all the operations and maintenance, delivering all the repairs and spares and whatever else is needed. So that's all wrapped into the operating costs, which you pay via your electricity bill, basically.
Now Pete asks, is it a co-op per turbine or is it an overarching thing?
No, it'll be a co-op for each project. So this is a single turbine project, but if we had a 5 turbine project, there would be one co-op for that whole project. You can, however, be members of both. So you could own a little bit of Greg Vather, our first project. You could own a little bit of a solar project. You could own a little bit of an offshore wind farm in time. So you can just do a sort of, clean energy sort of pick and mix, own a little bit of that, it's really, really flexible, basically. And you all just get all of those. If you own a bit of a wind farm, bit of a solar park, bit of an offshore wind farm, it all just feeds through to one saving on your bill. Obviously, again, coming back to the customer dashboard, you'll be able to see how much your wind farm and how much your solar park is generated each day. It will just be like we're imagining it'll be like a bar graph that was split into the different generation assets. But yeah, you'll be able to be part of as many projects as you want, basically.
So Cloudbase has asked, he's basically asked a question I was going to ask anyway, which is, do you need a smart meter to be a Ripple? No,
you don't. So you can just be on obviously you can be on Agile and you can be on Go, but you can be on Co-op Energy standard, either 12-month fixed tariff or variable tariff. So you don't, and like I said, your savings are driven by how much your generation from the wind farm generates each month. We know that. So it doesn't. You don't need to have a smart meter. You don't need to be on a smart tariff. If your wind farm savings are £10, it's £10 whether you're on the co-op 12-month fixed, variable, or Agile or Go. It's driven by the wind farm, not your specific tariff.
Okay, and so someone's put here: does a member's price incentive have to match the consumption to generation of the wind farm? And is there a minimum investment and maximum investment that you could go into Ripple?
So you don't have to match it at all. So the minimum is £25. Obviously, £25 isn't going to buy you very much of the wind farm, so your savings won't be very much. And then the maximum is the equivalent that would generate 120% of your consumption. So you can't buy 10 times as much of the wind farm as you would need to
Right.
power your home. You can buy a little bit more, but not loads more. But we, you know, all part of being accessible to as many people as possible, we set the minimum quite low because we want as many people to be able to access it as possible. And you can do, you know, pay in 5 monthly installments, buy a bit, buy another bit the next month, you know, however you want to sort of break it up really. But yeah, so you haven't got to own enough to cover all of your consumption at all. You can own whatever you like really.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It seems like such a wonderful idea that is clearly the way that things used to be done in terms of cooperatives of groups of people. And I think lots of people, when they think cooperative, they think on a geographical cooperative.
Yeah.
So a group of houses, a village, or a group of people in a close vicinity to each other. But of course, a community, a cooperative, can be any group of like-minded people. And so, and that's not a particularly new idea. So like all the best ideas are often things, and even you said at the start of the show, like you looked around and said, why is no one doing this? So I'll do it myself then. It's kind of obvious, but it seems like you're kind of almost going back to the future with this idea.
Totally. It's like, you know, in a digital world where, you know, the internet connects people wherever they are, you don't need a co-op to have, you know, it's only people in this village or only people in this town. The beauty of the digital age is that you can form a community of like-minded interests across the whole country. You don't need to be living, you know, and the part of what Ripple does is we bring together all those people from across the country to make something really cool happen. And that's a really, really good thing. So yeah, it's sort of modernizing the you know, energy co-op concept, digitalizing it. But you know, and that then broadens the reach. So you know, it shouldn't be, you know, I live in London, there's no way I'm going to get a wind farm around here, but everyone should have access to clean energy ownership. So yeah, we've just gone for really broad access rather than, you know, more sort of like parochial, it has to be in this area. And yeah, and it just open up to everyone, we say.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Sarah. And as a person who can't have solar on his roof because of the way that his house lease is written, I've always wanted to get more involved and invested in renewable technology. I can't have a wind turbine. I can't have solar. So now I can have a slice of wind turbine. Yeah, I can have a slice of wind turbine. And it'd be nice to, you know, feel as if I own a little part of that turbine. I think you've cracked a real good idea, and I'm surprised no one thought of it sooner, and I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So the one thing is people want that sort of not green bling, but you know, if you've got solar, your neighbours know you've got solar. If you own a bit of a Ripple wind farm, your neighbours are never going to know. So like, you know, somebody was like, can we get like a brass plate for my front gate and stuff? So we're sort of looking at, you know, can you get like a window sticker so you can say, okay, this house is powered by my wind farm over in South Wales. But yeah, people want to do stuff, and we want to help them make the biggest impact they can possibly have.
No, you can make one of those little. You can make one of those little turbines with the little solar panels on the front that they put on the car and they spin around.
So hey, look, how can people find out more? Can people still get in on your turbine number 1 in South Wales? If they've listened to this now or watched it, can people still get involved?
Yeah, it's still open. So you can just go to ripplenergy.com and then you can just sign up from there. So there's a little, just put in how much your electricity consumption is, and then we work out if you want to own 100%, this is what you need to do, and then you can just say, okay, I only want to own this much or that much. Yeah, so just go to the website and all the details are there.
Wonderful. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Nick, any final words?
Chris Rogers is just as you invested yet, Nick. I will be as soon as the show finishes. So yeah, Sarah's answered all the questions that I actually wanted. The great thing about this interview is I came into it with honest customer questions that I wanted to ask, and you've answered every single one of them, and even better than I expected. So I will be investing myself later on tonight. Yeah. So I won't do much for the male-female ratio of your customers, but
everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for watching and listening. Check out Ripple Energy, also EV Nick YouTube channel and EV News Daily podcast, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks.